Hello, everyone. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. Now, when I speak, my topic is something I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is an expression that means carpe diem, go after what you want. And what I wanted to do this year was to rewatch Halt and Catch Fire, but this time actually talk about it with other humans. And now I'm getting a chance to up-level that because I'm getting an opportunity to speak with people who actually worked on this show, which has been a blast. A quick piece of housekeeping before we jump in and before I introduce my guests for today. If you're brand new to the show, the episode recaps are safe for you. They're spoiler free up until the episode you're on. But these interviews could be spoiler filled. We could say anything from any episode. So just be aware of that before we jump into it. But with all of that said, I'm very excited to introduce my guests for today. We've got two. This is going to be wild, folks. We've got Barak Hardley, who played Petey Manning, and we've got Lenny Jacobson, who played Donnie Manning. These are the brothers from the COMDEX episodes. And if you've listened to any of my coverage so far, you know I'm very, very excited for this interview. Hello, Lenny and Barak. How are
Hi.
you?
Good. How are you? We're excited.
So exciting to talk with you. You're brought in together as a team. And I'm wondering, well, first of all, actually, I'm wondering, did you know each other before you were cast in these roles?
No,
No,
right? We had never met.
Okay.
no. We met for the first time, possibly on the plane or at the hotel. I think it was on the plane. We saw each other, and then maybe in the car, and then the hotel.
Oh my
But it was
goodness.
nice because we became friends. We shot on like a Monday, one scene, and then like the next Monday for another scene. So they just kept us in a hotel in Atlanta for a week and we just hung out and we're still friends.
That
Yeah,
sounds so fun. You two had like instant chemistry and timing with each other.
yeah. Really, like Barak is saying, we got there. It's always interesting when you go on the road to shoot something because you're kind of sequestered in this one area, and then you'll go to set and you'll do your thing, and then normally you'll just leave. Like a buddy of mine went to Vancouver. It was one day and he was done, but they were like, "You're shooting Monday, and then you're off until Monday, and we're just going to have you stay here." So we spent a week in Atlanta together, from not knowing each other to literally spending every day together in meals, and we really got to know each other really well, and I think that helped with the character. But I think also we did have kind of a natural um connection to each other when we started doing the scenes. We were very similar but also very different, but it worked out as being siblings who were kind of, you know had different styles to their personalities.
Absolutely. So since you were not a duo coming in, how did you both get onto the show? What was that process like for each of you? And I'll throw that one over to Barak first.
Oh wow. It's hard to remember. I mean, 99% of acting is auditioning. So you just do all these auditions. But yeah, I think it was just an audition and then a callback and then you get that rarest of things where they say you got it. You're like, "Oh, cool. I get to go see Atlanta and be on TV."
Yeah,
It's such a fun feeling.
it was also a show that hadn't aired yet, correct? So we
That's
were
probably true,
yeah, so,
because you were 9 episodes in for the very first season, the first time you
right.
showed up. So I don't know if any of it.
They shoot the whole thing and then it airs. I mean, I don't remember the audition. It was definitely an audition. They're all auditions. If you're lucky enough to get something offered to you, that's great. But even auditioning is great sometimes too, because it does, it gets you ready for the stuff you do on set, and then you book it. And I think we didn't know who was I didn't know who was playing the brother until we had gotten there. Um, and then you just kind of, I think we spent a day together. I think the first scene was at the convention center sitting at the table with Lee. Did we
Oh, really? You did that one first?
Am I right or wrong about that, Barrick? Do you remember?
I have almost no memory.
So I think
I
from
feel ill-equipped for a podcast about this.
Oh no,
Looking
we're gonna
back,
get through
because
this.
it's just
We're
it's
gonna
so
squeeze out
far in
every
the
last
back.
memory.
so
Yeah,
I think
Lenny,
it
remind me.
so I think we shot 2 different days, 2 different scenes. They were a week apart. One of them was with the breaking machine, and the other one was sitting with Lee at that little table in this giant room.
Oh
I
yeah,
think that was the first one because I remember we took a van into the city, and it was like a convention hall, and we sat in the chairs with all the other actors for a while, like they were doing other things. So Barrick and I were just wandering around this giant, escalators up and down and in the back area, and we met Carrie and Mackenzie and I think Scoot, and then we got to shoot with Lee Pace, who I had only really known from Pushing Daisies, correct? And I remember
Yeah.
the one thing Barrick and I both recalled, we were like, God, he is a giant, handsome man.
he's beautiful.
He
He's
was huge.
beautiful, and he's so tall.
He was massive.
And I think the first time we shot with him, he was wearing like a suit or something. But the second time we shot with him, he was wearing these Jordache jeans. And this isn't, this is like, I remember us looking at each other and going like, I normally wouldn't notice this, but he's got an incredible ass.
I think I remember you saying. Well, it was also very funny because the two of us, we were very, I don't want to say sloppy, but we were both. Barrick is probably 30 pounds lighter than he was when we shot that. And then we were standing next to this very masculine, beautiful Lee Pace, who was awesome, and we that was a great day. The first day was really great. It was at the convention center. We do the scene at the table, and then literally we don't shoot again for another week. And that was the breaking of the. I think it was that great scene in the little room. We had a bunch of background who were just watching us, and the machine kept breaking, and then they were giving us the business. I think Scoot and him were asking us. We just looked foolish, and that's also very fun to do when you're doing a presentation that's supposed to go poorly. It's very easy
Hmm.
caught up in that, like, frustration. And they had this, the props had this whole, it was supposed to break and it would start printing. And it's also based, now, what was this, in the 80s?
Yes.
So
This
it's
was
very,
83.
it was, yeah, it was really, really, it was a really interesting a shoot both days. But yes, very handsome Lee Pace was the first day.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so we'll get into the details of some of the scenes, but I think if we look at sort of the wider view of this, now you wouldn't have a frame of reference for what was different coming in for these episodes that were COMDEX, but the show normally had this very like small, intimate feel. And then you show up for these scenes at COMDEX where, there's so many people, it's just these big convention center types of settings. But you had important roles and, a lot to do in them. So I guess what was the feeling of that coming from a show that was normally operating on this very small, intimate way and then blasting in for an episode where they had like probably the most complex situations they had in terms of extras and number of people to command? What did that feel like for you on set?
I remember being very impressed with the set, because when you're reading a script and it goes, "Oh, you're in a convention hall," but it's a relatively small TV show. How are they going to pull this off? Like, do you have to set up a whole convention? And then we walked in and it was beautiful. Like they did scene extensions, the little green screen here and there, but they had this whole beautiful set filled. And I was just thinking that, oh, the production designers had to probably come up with 50 different 1980s fake logos, and they
Mm.
came up with brochures.
Oh,
Like they had to build this entire world. And then even down to our scene where there are these lighters, all with Sprinter, and they had to come up with the logo. It's so funny, like you just the amount of work that needs to be done when a writer just says, this is a convention. But they did such a beautiful job of the whole thing. I
I
still have one of those lighters. I love it.
I do too. No, wait. Is the lighter
That's
in
from
the
season 3.
right? Okay, I was gonna
Mhm.
say because we do come back. Did we talk about that or
We'll talk about all the scenes, that
right?
you're in.
Yeah, we're
Mhm.
jumping around, huh? Yeah.
I'm on the ride with you.
Back a couple seasons later, that's the big convention, and that was, I think you said the name of the product, right? Whatever. So, anyways, I'm always blown away
S printer.
by S printer by set design, the most minute details. Swag. We had swag at that booth. We had a bucket of lighters that people were giving out, and when you're on set, like Barak and I were both like, hey, can we take any of this? And they're always say no. No matter what job you do, they could have 100 t-shirts or 100 flyers or hats. They're like, no, no, no. We keep that stuff. It goes into storage. Nothing ever happens with it. I did a show once where we had like a bait shop and it was filled with logos of like these brothers or whatever. It was also brothers. And there was just hundreds of different things that no one ever did anything with. So yes, I have the lighter. Um,
We
I
did
might
steal. I guess what we're confessing to is we did steal from
we
set.
stole. What we're saying is we definitely stole. Yeah. So for the size of the show, in the
If
first,
you hire me as an actor and give me a lanyard, my character lanyard, I will steal that
You'll
lanyard.
just walk
Sorry,
away with
Lenny, I
it.
cut you off.
Oops, was that still around my neck?
and you guys stay right here for 1 second. Go ahead. Talk
You
about it.
bet. We'll talk
Oh,
about
he's getting
lanyards
the
and
lanyard.
lighters.
Yeah, so in the first season we were saying how we didn't know the show because it hadn't come out yet. But by the time we got back, I had watched the show and loved it. I was like, oh, this is a very special, cool filmmaking, cool story, great actors. So by the time you get back on set, it's like, oh, you're a fan now. And the cool thing about the hard thing about dropping into like a guest spot on a series is you just sort of have to guess at the tone and hope you get the tone right of the show. Um, so that's a little tricky, but the great part of like doing a show you love is you get the tone and you can come in and then getting to be on a show as a fan's amazing. Like I got to be on The Office for 2 seconds in a late season and I would have paid so much money to get the experience of like come to the set, hang out with the actors, eat lunch with us, be in it, like
Yeah, it's like you were.
it's a real dream scenario.
Yeah.
Sorry, Lenny, what?
I don't have the lighter.
Oh no.
I realized that it was in a bag that I would bring to me to all jobs. But that bag would also go on airplanes, and I definitely took it out of the bag at some point, which makes me think that you and I, when we flew back from Atlanta, definitely brought lighters on air. So we've admitted to 2 crimes. Stole
Crimes.
lighters on airplanes.
See if we can get to 3 here. Well, so I'm curious, I mean, I love Petey and Donnie. They're amazing. And most of that I think is because of the choices that you two were making along the way in those scenes. And I'm curious how much of it how much was on the page versus how much were you improvising? Like I'm sure the lines were there, but you were playing with props. There was a lot you were doing.
I think it was pretty much a lot on the page because that was a very well written script. I think they stuck to the script a lot in that. I don't think they were doing a lot of improv because it's very time, the decade it's in, the style and everything. But I think they let us have some fun when the printer was breaking. We definitely got to throw in some because it was literally, I think on the page it was, we start the presentation. I think we gave like a speech at the beginning. I haven't seen the episode in a while, and then we hit go, and it's like ka-turn, 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 ka-turn. And there had to be like, they were like, you guys can act real as you would, frustration, embarrassment. And then I believe it was Lee and Scoot starting to ask questions to kind of prod us and take the focus off and make us look bad in front of those other people. So we were able to have a little bit of fun with that. And then I think Barak and I think, if you do an audition for a show where they have you coming in for a guest star and you're lucky enough to play characters like Donnie and Petey, they're casting you based on who you are and letting you build that character yourself. These guys, I don't think were like a lot of other people on the show because they were a little bit goofy. They failed they were consistently failing. And I think Barak and I leaned into that kind of, the idea of being brothers who were in their garage together at a very young age and just tinkering and design something. And actually, I remember you and I talked about this, Barak, like, yes, we did poorly with that machine, but the fact is, like, that machine was still pretty amazing at the time. We were thinking, oh, we're still pretty incredible inventors. And then when it comes back, we come back in the later season. I think we've also come up with another complete product. So yes, in the grand scheme of things, in the narrative, we were pretty bad, but also we probably ended up, multi-millionaires.
Oh, that's interesting. We went on. Oh, I love this idea. We went on to be successful.
Absolutely.
Didn't we get screwed over though each episode by them? Am I remembering that right? Like
we
they
come
really.
Well, so it sounds like you shot your scenes out of order for where they appeared in the episode in that first episode you were in. But the first time we see you, we've just come from a scene that you're not in where we establish that Gordon remembers you guys from 81 COMDEX where your demo also was terrible. And then they're having a big problem and they've lost their suite. They have no place to host their events and they need to trick somebody out of their suite and they target you. And so we know that before we go into the room with Petey and Donnie, and then you see Petey and Donnie and you're like, these two are about to lose their shirts. And it's just
with the shrimp.
Yes.
There was a giant bowl of yes, now I'm remembering it. They need our suite. Look, we were at this place. We've been there before. We've returned. We're memorable. We had our own suite.
Why do you think Petey and Donnie keep coming back like year after year after year to fail over and over and over again?
I think in the grand scheme they fail, but they're actually ahead of the game. It's like Jobs and Wozniak. They made things that actually were amazing, but they just didn't get to the finish line. But I think eventually, in my mind, Petey and Donnie ended up loaded and then sold that to Apple in like the mid to late 80s and are living on a beach somewhere right now for sure.
This is funny doing this deep dive about the characters all these years later. Well, I would say like in order to design a piece of technology to solve a problem and then patent it and then market it and then, actually have a somewhat working prototype with just two kind of dummies is an insane amount of problem solving skills. I think these guys do like and they're betting on themselves. They're like beating. I think that's awesome. And so I think this sours the whole show for me a little bit, knowing that the main characters went out of their way to try to destroy these two sweet guys. Huh.
It leaves me with conflicted feelings when I watch those episodes, but it makes me want to protect Petey and Donnie at all costs. It's like you want to just like scoop them away from the Cardiff Electric team, which actually ends up becoming important later in that first episode that you're in. But if we, I think about your pitch.
I pitch it?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to pitch a show idea right now. If like a Better Call Saul post Breaking Bad, this could be the show that comes back after Halt that focuses on a side character. And I think that it's Petey and Donnie still pursuing their dream despite all
Yeah,
the years of being sabotaged. We're older, we're wiser.
yeah. I think I think that's a great idea, and I think we should get that. Now, how long has the show been off the air?
I mean, it was last on the air in 2017, so
It's so
you know,
7 years.
It's time.
Everything gets a reboot. Everything gets a spinoff. They're doing the new Suits. I think we could sneak in. I think now is the time to capitalize on that. I'm going to have some people try and make phone calls. My schedule's wide open.
Anybody who's listening to this podcast right now,
Why?
if you're going to be a viewer, we need
We need-
voices.
We need jobs. I feel like when we came back for the second one, and this is all such a blur of. It's funny, when we shot the first time, they brought us in on a Sunday. We shot on a Monday. We spent the whole week. We went to museums. We went to a gentleman's club, like in the back neighborhoods, like a famous strip club in Atlanta. What's it called, Barak?
Oh, Claremont Lounge, something? Claremont Lounge?
Claremont Lounge. I still had the green. We had many dinners together. We bonded over music. Barak is a great artist. He was drawings. I think Barak had 2 or 3 dates that week. They didn't go well.
Got my heart broken. Yeah.
We watched movies together. We just had such a great time. And the second time, we were so excited. Hey, they're bringing Petey and Donnie back. Yes. I think I texted or called Barak. I'm like, we're going back. I'll see you in Atlanta. We flew together. We got to it. It was a different hotel, different location. We shot one day and they sent us back the next day. I thought we were going to get to hang out. I was like, oh, we're going to have a whole reunion again. It was so fast.
Oh man. I mean, did you amidst all of these extracurricular activities, how did you prep for the scene work that you were doing together, or was that something you kind of found on the day? Because you had all that before you did that second scene, but even before the first one, you were just meeting each other.
Yeah.
This was the easiest kind of acting for me, where it's just we get to be comedians in a very serious show. We just get to like have fun, and I'm playing a dumb guy who's like insecure, and that's just who I am, so I just got to just speak slowly and let Lenny drive the scene.
Okay.
Yeah.
Things going on in the back. Yeah, I think a lot of it was we instantly had like a nice bond. And Barak and I do a lot of comedy, and I think that's the easiest thing to do. It's the most difficult thing to do is go be a guest star on a show that's already established, or they're already 7 or 8 episodes in, because you feel this pressure to come. You're like a sub who fills in, and you got to come in and hit your marks. The crew all know each other. The cast all know each other. They have inside jokes. There's been bits, stuff caught on fire in previous episodes. But once you get used to doing that, and you know what they're bringing you in for, which is to bring some lightness to a serious show or bring comedy, all that uncomfortable you use to your advantage. Like, we're nervous on set. We're in this auditorium. We're standing there. We have props in front of us. We have to hit a button, then the machine works. We say lines, and that just all adds to the character. And then, we also had a week between the scenes. So one of the scenes, we had a whole week of really just being brothers. But I think even the first scene we shot together just felt very comfortable. And that's part of the reason we've stayed friends all these years. And we'll see each other at auditions or follow each other on social media and check in with each other. We picketed together during the strike one of the days. That's one of the great things about this business is, if you're lucky enough to do it and get a job, you go into this environment that is make believe, and it's play, and it's fun, and it's incredible. And you get very close to people in a very short amount of time. Like, you shoot one season together, this is your family. You shoot a week together, and you're both experience the same ups and downs and joys of the job. And then you might leave that job and never see those people again. But when you do, it's such an instant bond of like, hey, you and I were there in Atlanta and we did this. Remember that restaurant? Remember the place? And that truly is like the best part of the job, is those connections and relationships you make.
That's wonderful. I'm curious. So you're both obviously good actors, but you have to play, you know, these characters have to be doing a really bad demo and, you know, and they have to be stumbling over their words. And, you know, how do you play basically bad acting when you're a good actor? Is there a technique that you have to use to get to that place?
Barak?
How to do bad acting.
They weren't exactly
that's
acting, they
interesting
were
because you
pitching.
can like do a bad job at acting bad, I guess too. There's
Well,
a good way of bad
I
acting and I hadn't thought about it.
right. The scene as it's written, the one where we're actually doing the presentation, it kind of says they do a poor, you know, it's like if you said you do motivational speaking, Melissa. So it's like cue cards in front of you, and you're practicing it in a mirror. You can see the two of us being like, okay, you take the first line, then you take the second line. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Donnie and I'm Pete. Like, we actually did that in real time. And if you play it nervous and like, we're as an actor, most actors are probably good at public speaking. Although I know a lot of people who are like, I love shooting on film or things like that or digital, but I could never do anything on stage. It freaks me out. I get stage fright. I enjoy talking in front of people or on set and stuff. So it's even more fun to pretend that you're bad at it, or, you know, you're holding your note cards. And I think we actually wrote on our own note cards, like big giant letters, and you can add things to it to make it even more bad, but also good in the sense of doing a good job with the scene. Do you know what I mean, Bear?
Yeah, I love a scene where I can stammer and get lost in thought. I think acting is just like you eventually want to get to the words where they all sound right coming out of your mouth. But when you first get a script, the first 5, 6 times I read it, it all sounds bad coming out of my mouth. And then I think like, oh, I said that word wrong and I'm not nailing the end of this. And oh, I sound like a weirdo, which just makes me sound weirder and weirder. So I just channeled into like that whole experience of while I'm talking, I know I'm not being a good speaker. And it's just like gets in my head. I think, yeah, that was sort of how um it's
I
I was thinking how like a is the difference between comedy and drama is that you take the pain way more seriously in drama. You slow down the whole process and see the trauma happen in this person's life. But if you run it really fast and breeze over it, it's like comedy. So we were, we were just these idiots doing a bad job. But if you take that serious, it's the biggest opportunity of their life and they cannot blow it. And there's like immense stakes for these guys. So it was right.
You know what else makes that scene work, in my opinion, from what I remember, is we're playing that totally straight. Like, it's not like we're doing, that's one of the great things about doing dramedy or doing a drama where you're supposed to be a lighter moment or some comedic relief, is you just play that as a drama, but the way it's written and who your characters are, that is funny. So these guys earnestly showing up with their suits on that their parents probably they probably have one suit each, and they've done this whole presentation, and in behind closed doors, they're very intelligent, they're very hardworking, they're nerds or whatnot. They're probably introverts, and then they have to go in front of people and be like, okay, we're gonna sell ourselves. So they talk too loud, or they're too low, or like you say the first line and I'll say the second, and of course they're gonna mess that up. And I will say, one of the best things about doing this job was, and I'm not just saying it because he's on the screen with me, Barak is a great actor, but also a very giving, like, you can tell he's done improv and he's done sketch comedy and he's done like the listening and all the things they talk about when you're like acting classes or improv, is you got to let your partner do things and you do things. And I think we switched lines here and there. Like, there was no ego whatsoever to be the one who's like, all right, we got to make sure this is funny, or I do well in this scene. Like, we were both there to make the scene as authentic and funny and real as possible. And then also the same with Lee and Scoot, who were in the audience. Like, when you work with good actors, it makes you a better actor. It lifts you up. And I think a lot of, when you watch the best shows, even if sometimes you're like, oh, I love that show, the story's gets lost a little bit. And I'm not saying this about Halt, but the actors lift everything up. And I think that was part of the thing that worked so well for us as brothers, was we were just trying to make each other as good as possible, and everything about the scene, to work. And I think that's what makes things funnier, is we were so earnestly like, writing on note cards and like looking at each other's notes and just finding beats together. So yeah, it really is. As I talk about it now, I'm like, God, it is the best. It's such a difficult job when you have your lows, or you're not working, or you're waiting for the next job. But when you're lucky enough to do it, it's just the best. And with Barak, it was such a great experience.
Well,
thanks, pal.
Let me jump in for a second with a little surprise for you before we get back into questions about your scene work.
Oh, yeah.
I have a special treat for you, because an old friend of yours heard that you were doing this interview, and they were like, I want to have a reunion. And so I wanted to bring them in real quick, just to do, quick reunion for you. Let me bring them in here. Lenny and Barak, it's the Occasion Master from episode 9 of season 1.
Is that ours?
That's
this is the actual prop.
You know what else it is too? Look at the rug in that auditorium room. Oh man, that's the great thing about props, is they just had that. When you build something amazing like that, but you build it to not work, and then it works, like it's working too well, and they're like, hold on, that actually went too well. Like, they had to, tinker with it to make sure that it just spit out nonsense. And what a moment.
I mean, I was told that the Occasion Master wanted to come on to apologize to you for the paper jam, but here we are, and silence.
The Occasion Master.
Oh my!
What does it say in the front there?
Protonics, because you were Protonics Printers or something like that was the company name, and Occasion Master TM was the product name.
And what are these buttons on the front?
You know what? The person who actually owns this prop sent me some more photos, so I'll have to send them to you in an email. But that's
actual prop. Someone owns that prop?
Yes. And here's the wild thing about this. I connected with this person last week. They asked to be anonymous, but a huge thank you to that person for this wonderful moment here, because we reconnected and I didn't know that person had this prop, and they didn't know I was interviewing you. And so it randomly came up in conversation. I was like, would you believe that I'm actually talking to those two next week? And so, yeah, we just got a bunch of photos.
Tell them that the story of the two inventors continues on, and they're fine. Like Lenny said, we're both rich now.
Yeah, when
those characters.
We'll probably have that like in a glass case, like as over the years, the things that we invented in our mansions, it'll be like that in a glass case, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and the lighters, and the bips, and the beeps. Yeah, we'll probably need you. Let them know that we're probably going to need that back for the spinoff. There's a lot of buzz right now.
Because we want this spinoff to happen is a thing. I
But
mean,
so our fingerprints are all over that thing.
for real. Yeah. It's so wild, the timing of that. Well, I wanted to go back to actually to that episode in season 1 again, because what's happening with your characters is actually very important setup for what happens later in the story. So that scene that I guess you did first, where you're sitting down with Joe and you're at the table, and he's basically, it's part 2 of the Cardiff team's plan, where they're trying to now literally pull your suite out from under you.
Right.
And you know, he's saying, he's pretending to be from IBM, and he's saying we're going to have a competing product. I mean, you can compete with this if you want to, but you know, why even be here? And you two just want to get out of there and break even after you know. But later in the episode, another company is going to do that to the Cardiff team, basically.
See, karma.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but another company has actually stolen their product. And so Joe ends up sitting back at the same table with somebody else doing that to him. And it puts everything in this weird context, because it's like there's like an uber villain, and then we are meant to have some compassion for the Cardiff team, but they just did this to you. So knowing that we start the episode with this scene with you two, did you know what that was laying a foundation for later in the episode? Did that play its way into the scene at all?
Did we get the full script, or just our sides?
The question is not, did we get the full script? The question is, did we read the full script? I honestly can't remember. I also think in that type of situation, not knowing would have been better anyways, because we just stay in our own little world. And, you know, it's like, you don't want to know what happens based off of what you do, or stuff that you wouldn't know as the character. So, I mean, I can't remember now. And I don't remember if they gave us full scripts, because some of that stuff was very like, you know, that show hadn't aired. So if they didn't need to give us the full script, why give it to us?
And then we wouldn't have context for anything in it. Like, who are they?
Get a job,
what's
and
all this drama about?
You look for your name and you read those, and then you go shoot the scene.
Yeah. So if we go to season 3, you come back for COMDEX. We talked about it a little bit. You've got the S printer, or the sprinter, or it's whatever has more rigor, you know, like you've got another paper jam happening. You've got lighters you can't light. I mean, it's a mess. And this time, instead of doing a demo to an entire room full of people, you've got 3 people in your audience. You've got Joe, you've got Cam, and you've got some random guy in the middle.
Guy, pain in the ass, I think.
And they're all allowed to break, except you're not. So I'm just curious what that was like on set, where you're trying to get through this scene and they're actually allowed to laugh at you in that scene. Like, how do you manage to make your way through that scene the way that it comes off on screen?
Barak?
Well, yeah, and I remember not knowing why they were acting like that. I remember being confused about why they were breaking.
Because they
but then I wasn't going to call out the stars of the show and go, "What's going on?" So I was just like, I was genuinely reacting to how weird that was, because I didn't. Again, we didn't like know the context,
which is again
so we were.
Yeah, well, from what I recall, first of all, you do shows sometimes where you do a guest star on something, and they'll always go, "Oh yeah, we're going to bring you guys back." And they never bring you back. I think a million times where, not a million, but I've had 5 or 6 times where like this character could, unless you know going into it, so like you're going to do 8 episodes of the first season and you'll be back. Like for this though, they were like, here's the brothers. And you always joke, like Barak and I we're like, all right, see you when they bring us back in season 2. But you never assume they will. But then it's season 3. So the excitement of getting to go back, and then you go back to this world where now they've, it's 3 years later probably when they're shooting it. So and also I think in the show, how many years have gone by too. So the characters are older and different, and everyone's dressed a little differently, and their haircuts are different, and you kind of are trying to research to figure out where you are. And then you get to set and they're just laughing at you. It made shooting that scene so much more enjoyable and weird. Cause like he said, we're like, oh, this is the way we're doing it. And you can't help but react truthfully, like, excuse me, like, no, those are our lighters. And I remember just again, like our characters were so earnestly trying to succeed. And we're always the butt of their jokes. And it just was such a fun role to play because frustrated and earnestly trying is such a funny, easy thing to tap.
Yeah.
Been there. And again, playing it dead serious, like, no, excuse me. And then we have, you have one other guy who's just poking, and like, I think he was asking us questions. We didn't have the answers. And he's like, they're poking back and forth. Yeah. Again, what a fun job. I'm so glad we're getting to talk about it because it is really fun to remember all these little bits and pieces.
When you think about the
Lenny,
world that they were, oh, sorry, what was that?
Oh, sorry. I was just thinking, yeah, I do a lot of commercials, and there have been like 50 commercials where it's you go like, this is great. This is a great cast. It's funny concept. It's an interesting setting. Like we've all figured out this nuance. It's crazy how deep and fast commercials establish a whole world. And then every time we go like, this could be a show.
Right.
And you can see it so clearly. And then of course, like you never see each other, cut, end of that whole idea. It only lived for one day. So it was cool getting to come back into this world and now get to talk about it all these years later. Like no one ever wants to talk about a commercial, but this is awesome.
I also, side note, I've done, I think 3 or 4 jobs where I've had brothers, which is always so fun to play. And that is like, that is a relationship you take, like if you have a TV wife or a movie wife or a father or parents, like they say that for the rest of your life. They really do. Like I've run into almost all those relationships, and you genuinely, you always hug and you're like, this is my TV dad or my TV brother, or yeah, it's a lot of fun to make those connections with someone. And then like, because of social media or because of like Instagram, I posted some pictures. When we shot the first episode, we have pictures of us. It's one of my favorite pictures too, because like we both have really long hair and the glasses. Like I remember going to wardrobe and we had to try on all these 1980s suits, like really awful, like the material.
So funny.
And I remember them trying to figure out glasses for the characters, and Barak really wears glasses. I don't wear glasses except for like driving and things like that. And then getting and being like, and I have a picture of us on one of the sets that I will constantly use as like a flashback Thursday or Friday where, it just has a real serial killer vibe to it. Because the glasses were those big Dahmer glasses, you know what I mean? Like, kind of like what Barak's wearing today, his serial killer glasses today. But yeah, again, those are all the little parts of jobs like this, especially if you're doing jobs that are in a period piece. You just end up in these wild outfits and on these wild sets with set design. And I don't think people understand, like Melissa, you and I talked about I did a show called For All Mankind, which is space and NASA and this and that. And there are stuff that they shoot at this stage that is the Space Center where, the screens are, you've seen those in Houston. We have a problem, whatever those are. And everything is down to the most minute detail in the entire.
Oh my God, I would freak out. I would freak out.
There's ashtrays over here. There's headsets there. Like it isn't like they half-ass it because you're only going to see this part of it. Everything is set design is one of my favorite things on a show because it's so specific and so incredible what they do, you know, in every aspect.
Yeah, they have to build a world in just a moment.
They build a world.
I go crazy over it too. I came here because I thought I wanted to be an actor, you know, come to LA to be an actor. I thought that's what I wanted. But then once I finally started working on sets, I was like, oh, I think art department and all the creative departments is the whole magic of the world they build. I know it sounds corny talking about Hollywood magic, but it's really cool when you're on set. And like I remember even I visited that set for the show Chuck one time, and they had a standing Best Buy set where like everything was fake and cleared, and like and you could just walk around and look at all these details that had to be manufactured by creative people who have to work fast.
I'm gonna toot Barak horn one more time. He is an incredible artist, but also sculpture builder. If you ever go on his Instagrams or TikToks, you do weird shit like you'll build a miniature model of the outside of a movie theater, or one of my favorite things that he does, we're both big fans of the West Wing. So he'll do a diagram of the walk and talk openings and in the White House set up where they go. And so it's a like a, what am I trying to say? It's a blueprint of the White House stage in the West Wing, and then he has each character in a color
that I made by just watching the show and going, oh, there's a wall there.
Yeah, it's really amazing. I get such a, because I have no artistic ability whatsoever, but I do get a big kick out of the stuff you do. If you ever get a chance, or any of your listeners or viewers, to check that out, it's always very you know, if this acting thing doesn't work out, you should go into sets and props and things like that.
Oh, wow.
And it's not working out. But Lenny, I like I love your stuff. I love like now knowing you, getting to see you. Like that's a great show you're on. For All Mankind, watching you pop up in all this awesome stuff and making it better, dude.
Yeah.
It's I love it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, thanks.
I should be jealous as fuck, but I celebrate you instead.
That's how you know, like, you know, that's the one thing about this job. It can be difficult, but it can be so rewarding. And you end up working with a lot of people who are probably in your category. Like Barak and I go out for probably a lot of the same stuff, and we'll run into each other at commercials. And when it's someone that's genuinely like a good person or a very talented actor, it's so easy to, you know, have envy or jealousy in this job. But when you see a friend or a cohort, you know, do well, it's such a fun thing to watch, especially when you know them and you're like, like I worked on a job once with a guy who I was a big fan of. He was on Mad Men. His name's Aaron Staten. And we did a job together. And I remember working with him and I was like, oh my God, you are nothing like that. You are such a good actor because you are so like one way. And then on that show, you're so completely different. And that's just that's fun to watch.
You know, I just realized by being brothers is cool on set is because like we are the same type. We are competitors. Like they don't need two of us on a show. You know, so that whenever you do get to have that kind of brother thing with a guy that kind of, in the same type with the same kind of comedy background and stuff, it's all so fun.
Because when you watch certain things like movies or television shows, one of the games you play as an actor is you're like, oh, I could play his like cousin. Oh, that would be great if I got to play his brother on a show. You're like, I want to play Ted Lasso. Not that I'm Ted Lasso, but for example, you'd be like, oh, if only they brought Ted Lasso's brother from freaking Minnesota onto that show, it'd be great. So when you get cast as brothers, you're like, oh, this is a bonus. Two of us have the chance to get the job and work together. Because a lot of times you won't end up working with that person because you're going out for the same types of roles and things like that.
And there's something about when you get to play brothers or have like you were saying about having a relationship with people, it's like you just for a while pretend with this stranger that you do have a big connection, that you do have a long history, and you
Right.
have all these nuanced feelings, but at the end of the day, I love them. And you just sort of like pretend to do that for an hour or two in moments. You know, it's a very limited amount of time you actually get to act. So in that small, in that small moment, just by
Moments.
pretending to have a relationship with someone, like you tend to then have more of a real relationship, which
Well, also,
I guess that's like I could just pretend that with anybody in my life, I guess.
well, because we got that show 10 years ago now. We actually are 10 years later knowing each other and having, we don't see each other often. And you see everyone now on social media and you feel like you're in their life. Like you run into someone and you're like, oh, I thought you got married and how's your dog? And you're also showing the version of yourself that you want to. And then every now and then you'll let people in and be like, this is the real me or whatnot. But yeah, it's I think I was saying it earlier. It's so much fun when you get to catch up with people you've worked with because you don't get a chance to see each other. If you do 5 or 6 seasons or even 2 seasons of a show or 2 episodes, that's such a gift to be able to work with those people like that and get those opportunities. And then sometimes it's just one day, 2 days, 3 days, and then you might not after that. So yeah, you're really lucky when you get like Grey's Anatomy's on their 21st season. And I'm just like, not everybody's the same on that show, but still, that is just they're so lucky to be able to do a job for that long with people and I'm sure the cast has changed a million ways and producers and directors and blah blah blah. But I know there's a few of them that have been on probably almost every one. That's got to be wild and so much money.
Oh my goodness, guys, I don't want this to end. But here we are. I mean, before we wrap, is there you started to mention things that you're working on, but is there anything else that you're doing or that might come out soon that you want people to know about? I know that we just came off of a strike and it's probably a slower time.
Yeah, I think the reason Barak and I are enjoying this so much is because it is, you have some great jobs and you have some peaks and valleys. And when you get to go back and remember them, thank you so much for letting us do this. When you go through some of those times where you don't work as much or this and that, or after a strike, and it's funny, we're kind of reconnecting here about this, but that was look, the strike was difficult and it lasts for 6 months or 8 months with the writers. But one of the great things about the strike is you ran into people that you from other jobs or you hadn't met or people you audition with, but you haven't worked with. Barak and I were lucky enough to work together, but there's a few other people who I ran into and I was like, we don't know each other, but we've been in the same room together like 60 times, although you're not in rooms together anymore, but you've gone out for the same thing. So it was a cool time to reconnect with people that either you hadn't worked with or you were a fan of their work or this and that. And we're still kind of trying to find our footing after the strike. I don't necessarily have anything right now. Not Halt and Catch, but For All Mankind had been airing, but people always catch up with shows in different levels. Like you'll get people. I just watched Happy Valley. Did you guys ever watch Happy Valley? It's like a British crime drama. And I was into it. I watched 3 and I was like, this show is amazing. It was from 2013. I was acting as if it just aired yesterday. I was like, are you guys watching this show? This show, I'm a huge fan of this actress. Meanwhile, that actress is like, where were you 10 years ago? But that's a great thing about shows like that. Like, look at Suits having this rebirth. People are watching that show 8 years after. Now it's getting a spinoff. So yeah, people watch Halt and Catch Fire, catch up on it, do the rewatch, then push for the Petey and Donnie spinoff, a la Breaking Bad, a la Better Call Saul. And then we'll come back.
What I think it's called, Melissa, you said Break Even. I was like, is that the name? Is it Break Even? Halt and Catch Fire and then Break Even?
It might be. I think that's the move. I think it's what we do. And it perfectly sets up continued, like just barely making it for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is how it goes. Yeah, this is the hardest time. Every creative person in LA is like, it's a pretty dark season because the strike happened, and then we all hoped that that would be work, but then there's another looming strike. So it's and then COVID. So it's just been sort of like 5 pretty tough years for every creative person I know in LA. So all that to say is I'm not coming up on your TV anytime soon, but catch me in commercials. You'll see me popping up on your low rate Hulu thing from time to time. And it's my way of saying hi. And if you want to see my art, go to Barak Hardley. Look me up. You're going to spell my name wrong. So good luck figuring out where that is.
Instagram.
Yeah,
Barak.
look me up on Instagram. Yeah.
Well, if they're hearing
I'm
this, your
always
name's
making
on
something
screen,
fun.
so that's half the battle. So
Great, right there.
there we
Put an
go.
at,
You did it. Yep.
lose the space, and then that's it.
Oh my goodness. Thank you both so much for taking the time to do this. This was an absolute blast.
Thanks for having Melissa. Thanks for doing this, Melissa. I think it's great.
Thank you.
You know, this is the thing. I just saw something the other day where they're like, oh, someone's going to do a rewatch. I'm not going to, shout out their show, but I think it's good for, fans love these shows, and and we're at a time right now where I don't know if it's the world or the post-pandemic, people are rewatching things because it's less stress and it's more comfort. People have comfort shows. You're on your 5th time watching The Office, or your 3rd time watching Halt and Catch Fire, or Sopranos, or The West Wing. And so to have these podcasts where people talk about it, and you get the community together, and you can get actors in on it, and they get to talk about what it was like shooting the show, because really the things that go in, like Barak saying, go into The Office. I never got to do The Office. I'm so jealous that he did. But the fact that you go to there is a place in the Valley that is that fucking Scranton. Oh man, the whole thing. And
we almost got there.
The Office is there. So it's important that people do these podcasts to keep these shows alive and talk about these shows, and for fans and creators and things like that. So thanks for doing that.
What a blast it has been. And to everybody out there watching, like Lenny just said, go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye, everyone.
Bye.